Before I could sit down, my brother joked, "Still delivering packages?" I smiled, "Something like that." My cousin bragged about his new job. "It's a tech firm called Orion." I said, "Oh, that's mine." Forks clattered, no one breathed. Then my dad whispered, "You're joking, right?" I wasn't. "My name's Olivia, I'm 34, and until recently my family thought I was a cautionary tale. The older daughter who never quite figured things out. The one who still drove a rusty 2008 Corolla and never posted vacation photos, engagement rings, or big career moves on Facebook. I wasn't flashy. I didn't give them much to talk about, so they made their own assumptions. I pulled up to my parents' place for Sunday dinner. They do this whole spread once a month. Pot roast, rolls, too many people talking over each other. My brother always shows up in something louder than the last time. That week it was a custom-wrapped truck with giant tires and LED lights underneath. He revved it twice before cutting the engine. Everyone came out to look. I carried in a plastic pie from the grocery store. No one noticed. The house was full. Cousins, aunts, uncles, the usual cast. I set the pie down, barely got a hello from my mom, and made my way toward the table. I passed by my cousin Mark, who was already holding court in the dining room. He's 29, sleazy type, gelled hair, new job every year and a half. He was mid-brag when I walked in. "So yeah, it's this tech firm called Orion. Super elite. Total rocket ship. They're building something big, I can't even talk about most of it. I'm on the growth team, early stage equity, catered meals, rooftop bar." He was soaking up the attention. My dad asked him a few questions, impressed. My aunt looked genuinely proud. I just pulled out my chair. That's when my brother looked up from his phone. "Still delivering packages, Liv?" A couple people chuckled. I smiled calm. "Something like that." Mark kept going like he didn't hear me. "The building's brand new, downtown, right next to that giant Chase Tower. All glass. They scan your face to get in. Super locked down. Like invite only." I took my napkin, unfolded it, and said it without looking at anyone. "Oh, that's mine." Silence. Actual silence. Mark blinked. "Wait, what?" My dad leaned a little closer. "You're joking, right?" I wasn't. I didn't explain. Didn't raise my voice or clarify. Just let the sentence sit there like a dropped match. They were frozen, trying to figure out if they'd heard me wrong. But they hadn't. I built Orion 5 years ago from my apartment. While freelancing at night and eating canned soup. I hired my first engineer using a $12,000 tax refund and a 3-month contract I lied my way into. Now we had a downtown office, multiple teams, and a valuation that made me dizzy if I thought about it too long. Mark, it turned out, had been hired 2 weeks ago by one of my department leads. I hadn't even known. They had all assumed I was struggling because I never showed them anything. But that's how I liked it. I never told them when I landed my first angel check, or when we hit $1 million in revenue, or when we made our first acquisition. I let them talk over me at dinners and ask if I was still figuring things out. The funniest part was that I hadn't come here to say any of this. I wasn't planning to drop anything. I didn't even care if they ever knew. But something about my brother's jab, the same kind I'd heard a dozen times before, hit different that night. So I told them. One line. That was enough. They stared at me for a while. Then the questions started. I kept my answers short. My mom's tone changed. My dad leaned in more. Mark just sat there quiet now, probably wondering how the girl in the old Corolla was signing his paychecks. That was the night the dynamic shifted. It started small, just curiosity. But I felt it. The way people started choosing their words more carefully around me. How my parents suddenly wanted to know more. How my brother stopped joking as much. They didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning of something they'd regret. And something I would too. After that dinner, everything felt slightly off. Not in a bad way, not yet. Just different. My family had always had their little hierarchy. My younger brother Tyler was the golden one. Charming, athletic, the type who could crash a car at 17 and still get it replaced by Christmas. My parents loved telling his stories. Mine never came up. I was the quiet one who worked too much and should get out more. But that night changed something. I could feel it the next morning. My mom texted me first. She wrote, "Hope you got home safe, Liv. Dinner was nice. We should catch up sometime, just us girls." That had never happened. She hadn't asked to catch up in years. Usually I got messages like, "Can you bring napkins next time?" Or, "Tyler's birthday is Sunday, don't forget." Then my dad called that afternoon. He said he was proud of me, that he always knew I was doing something big, even though he absolutely hadn't. He talked about how much he admired people who took risks, how hard business must be, and how he'd always wanted to start something himself, if the timing had been right. I played along, said thanks, hung up. By the end of that week, I had 3 unread messages from family members I hadn't spoken to in months. My cousin Mark, the same one who'd bragged about my own company to my face, emailed me with a business idea. It was full of buzzwords and spelling errors. Something about leveraging synergy and expanding into digital product ecosystems. I didn't respond. Tyler messaged me next, said he'd been thinking about starting something and wanted to know what kind of projects I funded. He threw in a proud of you sis at the end. It was the first time he'd said those words in my entire adult life. 2 weeks later, Mom invited me over for dinner again. Same table, same dishes, same people, but the atmosphere was different. Softer, almost rehearsed. My dad pulled out my chair before I sat. My mom had made my favorite dish, something she hadn't cooked since I was in college. Tyler asked questions this time. About my job. About the company. About how big Orion really was. They weren't mocking me anymore. They were listening, hanging on to every vague, cautious thing I said. And I have to admit, I liked it. I'd spent years being invisible in that house. Years of biting my tongue when they joked about me being practical to a fault. So when they finally started to look at me like I was someone worth taking seriously, it hit harder than I expected. I didn't see it as manipulation then. Just connection. That night, my dad brought up how rough the last year had been. The car repairs, the hospital bills, the leaking roof. He wasn't asking for anything directly. Just talking. But something inside me shifted. Without thinking, I said I could help. It came out naturally. Too easily. I offered to cover the cars. My mom's barely ran and my dad's truck made noises that sounded like it was begging for retirement. They protested for about 2 minutes before my mom asked what color she could get. The next week, I wired the payments and handled the paperwork myself. 2 cars, modest ones. Reliable. Registered under my company. Tax write-off. It made sense financially, I told myself. When I showed them the keys, they both cried. My mom hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. My dad said he couldn't believe how selfless I was. I went home that night smiling. For the first time in years, I felt like their daughter again. Like I'd finally earned it. But a few weeks later, the messages started coming more often. My mom asking if I could help out just a little with groceries that month. My dad wondering if I had connections for his business license renewal. Tyler mentioning a loan for a sure thing that just needed a little boost. I told myself it was fine. I could afford it. What I didn't realize then was that something had shifted permanently. Not in me but in them. They weren't proud. They were calculating. And I had just opened the door for everything that came next. There's a moment, I think, when you go from being a person in your family to something else entirely. A provider, a safety net, a solution. The transition is quiet. It doesn't come with a thank you or a label. Just happens. For me, it started with the cars. After I bought them, I told myself it was a one-time thing. A gift. Nothing more. But it didn't stop there. A week later, my mom casually mentioned that the fridge was leaking water onto the floor. Then she followed up with a photo of a new one circled in a Home Depot flyer. I asked if they'd already picked it out and she replied 10 seconds later with the model number. It was already in her cart. I bought it. Then came the little things. My dad called one morning while I was in a meeting, left a voicemail saying they were a bit behind on the property taxes this year. Not a crisis, he said. Just timing. I wired it over without a word. He called me a lifesaver. That word stuck with me more than it should have. I liked how it felt. Being useful. Tyler asked for $5,000 about a month later. Said it was an investment opportunity. He'd found some used vehicles at an auction that he and a buddy could flip. Low risk, guaranteed profit, he said. I asked one question, just one, and he snapped back with, "Don't you trust your own brother?" I sent the money that afternoon. That's how it went. No one asked twice. They didn't need to. The way they phrased things, it never felt like pressure. It felt like inclusion. My mom started asking my opinion about things she'd never cared about before. Design choices for the house, where they should vacation this year, whether she should get a new phone plan. But always threaded into those conversations was a need. A shortfall. Something that wasn't a big deal, unless I happened to want to help. My dad started talking about retirement, how expensive it was just to stay afloat. He never directly asked for money. He just brought things up in this tired voice like life had been one long uphill climb. And I believed him. I wasn't keeping count. I never thought of it like that. I just kept saying yes. Sometimes it was $200 for a vet bill. Sometimes it was $3,000 for a new water heater. Sometimes it was groceries or gas or last-minute plane tickets. They started joking that I was the family CFO. My mom said it once at a barbecue and everyone laughed. I laughed too. It didn't hit me until later that no one asked how I was. No one asked if I needed anything. I didn't mind at first. After all, this was what success looked like, right? Not just the big numbers in the office downtown, but being able to take care of people. I wasn't just succeeding, I was useful. And that part of me, the part that was never anyone's favorite, soaked it up. Because before all this, I was background noise. The quiet one who never got into trouble but never stood out either. The one who babysat for free, who drove her brother home from parties, who helped plan birthdays but never had her own remembered. Now they answered my calls on the first ring. Now my dad saved me the seat next to him at dinners. Now my mom smiled when I walked in like I was someone. I convinced myself it meant something. That it was love, just in a different language. I didn't realize it was a transaction. Not yet. But that day was coming. It would take someone who had nothing to gain from me to finally say what I couldn't admit to myself. And after that, I'd never see any of them the same way again. It started like nothing. A quiet Tuesday. I was in the middle of reviewing some licensing contracts, eating leftovers straight from the container when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick it up. It was Aunt Camille, my mom's older sister. We hadn't spoken one-on-one in years. She'd always been there at holidays, sitting near the end of the table with a glass of wine and a distant look, not much of a talker. I used to think she didn't like people. Now I think she just saw through them faster than most. She asked if I had time for coffee. No warm-up. No pretext. Just, "Are you free today?" I said yes before I could think of a reason to say no. She picked the place, some off-street cafe I'd never noticed before. When I walked in, she was already there with a black coffee and a half-eaten scone. She didn't smile when she saw me. Didn't ask how I was. She just looked me in the eye and said, "I think it's time someone told you what your parents are doing." I stood there for a second trying to register her tone. It wasn't angry. Just matter of fact. I sat down slowly. "What do you mean?" She leaned back and crossed her arms. "They're not proud of you, Olivia. They're dependent on you. That's not the same thing." I didn't say anything. She nodded like she expected the silence. "I'm only telling you this because I know you. You were always the quiet one, the one who stayed out of the drama. I know you think this is how families support each other, but you're not supporting them. You're carrying them. And they've built their comfort around the idea that you'll never say no." I laughed a little, more out of disbelief than humor. "It's not like I'm struggling." She didn't flinch. "No, you're not. But you're being taken advantage of. And no one else will tell you because they all benefit from you keeping your mouth shut." I looked down at my coffee. Still hadn't touched it. "Do you know," she said, "your mom told me you paid off their mortgage?" She said it so casually, like you owed it to them. Like it was your turn. I hadn't paid it all off. Just a portion. A big one. But she wasn't wrong. Then she dropped the one thing I wasn't prepared for. "I heard Tyler's opening a bar downtown. He's telling people you're one of the investors." I blinked. "I'm not." She looked right at me. "You sure about that?" It hit me like a punch. The $5,000 for the car flips. The follow-up 3-4 repairs. The 2004 permits. The random 600 that had nothing to do with anything, but was super urgent. No one had told me anything about a bar. Camille exhaled, soft and tired. "You think they love you more now because you're finally successful. They don't. They just finally see a use for you." I didn't know what to say. "Listen," she said. "I don't want a damn thing from you. I've never asked you for money. I never will. But you need to wake up. They're bleeding you because they know you'll let them. They're never going to stop. Not until you say enough." That night, I went home and did something I hadn't done in months. I opened every receipt, every transfer, every Venmo and wire and emailed invoice. I went back 6 months, then a year. Then I sat there with the number. $143,000. I tried to remember how many thank yous I'd gotten. Real ones. Not throwaway lines or texts, but actual gratitude. I couldn't count more than 3. I also realized something else. Not once had any of them asked if I was okay. Not when I lost sleep trying to negotiate that impossible acquisition last spring. Not when I'd worked 70-hour weeks through the winter. Not when I missed my own birthday because I was fixing a crisis at work. They didn't care how I got the money. They only cared that it came. That was the part that finally made my chest tighten. They didn't love me more now. They respected me even less. The next morning, my mom texted me. Something harmless on the surface. "Could you send over $600 for a patio heater? We're having guests this weekend and it's supposed to be chilly." I stared at the screen. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my banking app. Canceled the auto transfers I'd set up for their monthly utilities. Froze the family cards I'd added under my business account. Called the dealership and made arrangements to transfer ownership of the cars back to me. I did it all quietly. Then I sat down and I waited. Because I knew what was coming. They say when you stop giving, you see people for who they really are. I didn't believe that until the day I cut them off. I started small. Quiet. I canceled the automatic utility payments I'd been covering for my parents. Gas, electric, internet. The ones I'd set up without being asked back when I thought I was doing something good, something that finally made me enough for them. I froze the family credit card that was linked to my business account. I called the dealership and made arrangements to take back the 2 cars I'd purchased. Not sold. Repossessed. I told myself they'd understand. That maybe it would sting for a moment, but then they'd realize how far things had gone. How much they'd come to rely on me without even noticing. I gave them too much credit. The first call came from my mom. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask if I was okay. Just opened with, "What happened to the utility payments? We got late notices." I told her the truth. That I wouldn't be covering them anymore. That I'd helped for a long time but things needed to shift. There was silence. Then a cold laugh. "So this is it? You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said. "I just think it's not my responsibility anymore." "You don't mean that," she said. "After everything we did for you." I let her say it. The list. The roof. The food. The clothes. All the things parents are supposed to provide, turned into leverage. Then she hung up on me. Not long after, my dad called. His voice was tight, like he was trying to sound calm but couldn't. "You've made your point," he said. "You're successful. You've got money. Good for you. But cutting us off? That's how you repay us." "I already did," I said. $843,000 worth. He went quiet. Then came the low, bitter words I never thought I'd hear from my father. "You've always been selfish, Olivia. Even when you were a kid." He hung up before I could respond. That one hit different. Tyler was next. Just a text. "You serious about the cars? Wow." Then he posted something on Instagram later that night. A picture of a dinner table captioned, "Funny how some people forget where they came from." Half the family liked it. One of my cousins commented, "Some folks need to be humbled." My aunt from New Jersey DM'd me saying she hoped I was okay, but also added that it wasn't a good look to take back gifts. A gift? They turned my silence, my generosity, into an unspoken contract. And now that I was breaking it, I was the villain. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying every conversation from the last year. Every time they said thank you, when they said it at all. And how it always came with a little smile, like I was finally doing what I was meant to. Every dinner I paid for. Every emergency I fixed. Every subtle joke about how much money I must be making. No one ever asked how I was doing. No one ever said they were proud of me until I paid for something. I skipped the next family gathering. My mom texted, "We made your favorite, the roast with the garlic potatoes. Tyler's here. You could have come. But I guess you're too important now. No, we miss you. No, are you okay?" Just guilt. I didn't reply. And I didn't cry. I thought I would. I thought walking away from your family meant a kind of grief. But what I felt wasn't grief. It was something closer to relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't being drained. No one was asking for anything. No sudden phone calls. No sly requests. No manufactured emergencies. Just silence. It was louder than I expected. But it was honest. I sat alone that night in my apartment, the same one I'd been in for 6 years. Same old couch. Same thin blankets. Same dented mugs. I could have moved out a dozen times. Bought something bigger. Shinier. But I liked it here. It reminded me who I was before all this. Before I confused money with love. Before I let being useful take the place of being valued. I thought cutting them off would feel like betrayal. Instead, it felt like finally choosing myself. The final update. 8 months. That's how long it's been since I said no. Since I pulled the plug and stopped feeding the machine I didn't realize I'd built. The one where I poured in money and attention and in return got silence when I struggled and guilt when I didn't. For the first few weeks, I expected someone to show up. I don't know who. My mom maybe. Or Tyler, thinking he could smooth it over with one of those half-hearted apologies he used when we were kids. Something like, "Look, I was mad. But let's move past it." But no one came. Instead, I heard about myself through other people. Through distant relatives. Through vague social media posts. Through a woman at a networking event who used to be in the same church group as my mother. She said, "I heard things got a little tense with your family," with a kind of knowing look, like she wanted me to confess to whatever sin I was now being accused of. Turns out my parents had a story ready. In their version, I was ungrateful. I'd become someone else. The business had gone to my head. I forgot my roots. They made it sound like they were the victims of success, like they'd raised this brilliant daughter and she abandoned them the moment her bank account hit 7 figures. What they didn't say was how much I gave before I walked away. They didn't say how many bills I paid, how many dinners I funded, how many nights I stayed up worrying about them while running a company that nearly broke me in the first 2 years. That part didn't fit their narrative. They didn't mention that they never asked about my mental health when I worked 14-hour days. That they never once said we're proud of you before the money came. That when I finally succeeded, they didn't celebrate, they calculated. They didn't lose a daughter. They lost an income stream. And that's what finally set me free. Because for years I thought if I gave enough, did enough, stayed humble enough, eventually I'd earn something I never quite had from them. Real love. Real attention. Real respect. But they'd only ever seen me through the lens of what I lacked. When I was a kid I was too quiet. Too weird. Too bookish. They praised Tyler for being the one with charm, the one with friends, the one who'd go far. I was the one who helped with dishes. The one they'd ask to drive someone home. The one they forgot to include when planning vacations. I can't count how many times I was told, "We just assumed you were busy." And then I made something of myself. Quietly. Without their help. And they didn't know how to process that, so they redefined me as a resource. A faucet to turn on when things got tight. A backup plan. Even when they were thanking me, they weren't really seeing me. It wasn't until Aunt Camille sat across from me and said those simple words, "They're not proud of you. They're using you," that it hit me like cold water. Everything I'd confused for love was just strategy. So now I live differently. I stopped trying to prove anything. I don't bring up my work when I'm out. I don't post about wins. I don't answer unknown numbers. I still live in the same apartment. Still wear the same jacket I had 3 years ago. The Corolla's still running. I keep it maintained like it's a living thing. I invest in small businesses quietly. Ones run by women who remind me of me 10 years ago. Tired, overlooked, underfunded. I write checks with no strings attached, then disappear. I mentor one woman who has 3 kids and works night shifts while coding in the morning. I see myself in her. I tell her not to tell anyone when she starts winning. And I've learned something that changed the way I move through the world. You don't have to share your success to make it real. You don't have to buy love with your accomplishments. And you definitely don't owe anyone your peace just because you made it. If I could talk to my past self, the Olivia who stayed late at that dead-end job and ate ramen while trying to build Orion from her laptop, I'd tell her, keep your head down. Keep building. But don't think they'll see you differently when you make it. They won't. And that's okay. Because what you build is yours. Not theirs. And if one day you decide to share it, make sure it's with people who saw you before you were someone worth noticing. Not the ones who only came around when you were something to take from. I don't miss them anymore. I miss who I hoped they were. But that's not the same thing. I'm okay with the silence now. Because I earned my way out of their version of love. And I'm not going back.